Okay. All right. It is Thursday, August the 8th, 5:30, and we're going to go ahead and start our board meeting. Welcome, all of the district people here. Thanks for coming, so we have something to do today. And we'll go ahead and begin with roll call, starting with Larry.
Larry Jepson, board member.
Randall Bagley, board member.
Steve Norton, superintendent.
Roger Pulsford, board member.
Kathy Christiansen, board member.
Chris Corcoran, board member.
Terry Rhodes, board member.
Dale Hanson, business administrator.
Jeff Nilsson, board member.
Yeah. All right. Are you settled enough to go ahead and do the pledge and the? Okay. All right. We'll go ahead and have the pledge and mission statement? Yes. Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our mission statement is to educate students for success in a changing world.
Thank you, Jeff. All right. I'm assuming there's no public input. Okay. All right, and we have nothing on the consent agenda for tonight, so we will just move right to the action agenda, and we will go ahead and begin with the request for the approval of the TSSA plans.
I'll take a stab at this one. So Gary and I have been working with our principals on making sure that the comments that the different board members have made, first of all, we had to go around and train our principals on how to know that there is a comment in their plan, and then how to find that comment, and then how to respond to that back to that comment. Now, have some of you received comments back from principals when things changed and they did some things that
I couldn't even figure out how to do comments, so I just sent them an email.
Oh, okay. All right. But that was the idea. So at this point, Gary and I are feeling pretty comfortable with the TSSA plans, and we'd be asking the board for approval. If you have any hesitations, then please allow Gary and I to work with those schools specifically. But some of these schools are ready to start hiring and get job postings and get things out so they can start moving and have things in place for as the school year begins. So that's what we'd be asking for tonight.
Okay. So from the board then, I would like a motion to approve the TSSA plans as soon as Mike and Gary have a chance to verify that all of them are correct. And you can just say, so moved, if you'd like to say that.
So moved.
Okay, would somebody second that?
I second it.
All right, any questions or discussion?
Please tell the principals thank you. They did such a great job with those. I mean, for the first time,
Yeah.
it was really awesome.
Yeah. And we're learning. And so this will work okay.
Yeah, I appreciate the help that you gave all of us too, you and Gary,
Okay?
because we're learning too.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Okay. What is the actual motion then? The motion is to approve the TSSA plans as soon as Mike and Gary verify they're all correct.
So you have approved them. It's just Gary and I now will make sure that they're in place. All comments have been responded to, and then they can proceed.
Okay, and then they can get their money.
Mhm.
Okay. Do we have to do anything else
I don't
besides
think
this
so.
with them? Okay.
It was second.
Roger.
Hey, Dale, I can't log into board docs right now, so, but I approve. No.
I think these new Chromebooks or whatever are a little more sensitive to touch.
It's real sensitive.
So
Holy
it's not the
cow.
same as of today. It's whatever Carol texted you.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
This is a great book. Why does this? Okay.
For those of you who are wondering what we're doing, we just got new Chromebooks that we're trying to figure out how to run them.
How's that going for you?
Okay, are we good? No, oh,
Do you want me to wait and see if you can cast your vote there, Chris, or do you want me to just?
You should just, yeah, go ahead.
So all the votes are in and unanimously in favor of the motion.
okay, good. And by the way, thank you, Board, for doing the TSA plans. It's always hard the first time to know exactly how to do things, but we'll get better. We'll get better at them. Okay, next, a request for the approval to retire the proposed policies in section 2000. And we've had these, and Larry, you want to say anything about this?
I don't think there's any more to say. I think we just need to do it.
Okay, so I will take a motion then to retire the proposed policies in section 2000 on school board governance and operations, and they're listed there. if
I
you
move
have-
that we approve the retirement of the proposed policies in section 2000, the 4 that are listed on our board docs agenda.
I second that.
Okay, any questions, discussion? All right, we'll go ahead and vote.
All the votes are in and unanimously in favor of the motion.
Okay, thank you, Larry, for going through and taking care of all of that.
bet.
Appreciate it. Okay, the next one is a request for the approval of the updated board goals. And the only one that we needed to kind of focus on was number 5. And number 4 is just sort of the way it was last time, but with number 5 combined in, and we decided to change it and make a 4 and a 5. So number 5 reads, the Cache County Board of Education will meet yearly with a variety of students from each of the 5 high schools to receive input on how Cache District can help students be successful in their education. Does that sound right?
The only thing we need to do is we need to decide on a window when we want to do those. You know, we've got to get to 5, and do we want to do it the first? I would say we do it before Thanksgiving, but how do we find a window where it works? And who do we, if Mike said if we have a window, he'll try to get them scheduled so that a couple of us can go to each one. So how do we want to set that window? I don't know, Superintendent, your availability, I guess you and Mike can work that out, and then
Yeah,
could
we
just-
we can work that out, district level, yeah.
And then just give us a schedule or a time? or-
Well, if you want to, I think you're asking for like, do we want to do it like from September 30th to November 15th
or something like that. And I just went through and I thought for Cache High, Terry and Kathy, you could go there. Skyview, both of you also, because that's your area, and then Green Canyon, Chris and Randall. Or in Ridgeline, Randall kind of goes to both high schools, his area, and Jeff at Ridgeline, or I can, and then myself and Larry at Mountain Crest. But however we set that up, you know, some of us are more flexible than the others, because I can go most times. So should we just let Mike and Superintendent set those up, and we can see if it works our schedule? If not, we can get somebody else to go for us.
I also have students who, from my area, that go to Green Canyon, so if that helps, then I could attend that one as well.
Yeah. Everybody good with Roger just
Yeah, I
setting
like
it up
that
and let us know?
proposal.
Okay.
So Mike, if you can just set up kind of a schedule, and
30 minutes, how long do you want?
I think that's plenty good. And you mentioned during flex time or something.
Well, we can also do it after school
Or
hours.
whatever
There are
works.
groups that meet after school,
Yes.
so. we can do both, and then if it works better one way, we'll go that way the next time.
Okay.
Okay, that sounds great. Okay, well then I will take a motion to approve the updated board goals.
I move that we approve the updated board goals.
I second it.
Okay, any discussion or questions? Probably got all of that settled. Terry, since you're a high school principal, do you like this idea?
Yeah, it's fun.
Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and vote then.
Okay, all the votes are in and unanimously in favor of the motion.
Okay, great. Okay, we'll move down to the reports, and our first one is the emergency safety intervention procedure policy, and Joel will be giving us information on that.
First of all, I want to thank you. We got this bit of information to you fairly quickly, and I don't know if you've had sufficient time to look even through it. I think it's something that it's been long in coming, that should have been done probably earlier. I'm not sure the states in the union understand this very well, and guidance from the federal government and from the state have been very sparse, to say the least. And I have to commend our behavior coordinator, Kylie Atkinson, and Kayleen Wooten, who's our elementary resource coordinator, for putting this together. It's been an interesting ride as we've gone through this process in special education, and particularly in working with students who struggle with behavior issues and who lash out, who are violent, who struggle. And back in the early days of my career, we were able to grasp or hold or restrain without a whole lot of concern. We were able to provide support that way, but as time and effort have gone into this process in special education, laws and restrictions have come in to where we are not able to do that like we used to do 30, 40 years ago when I first started my career. And we've been able to look at processes and try to adapt and provide additional supports without that use of restraint. On occasion, we have to do that. We have to seclude a student on occasion. But back in the early days of special education, it was done quite often, and restraint was done quite often. And so coming through this process, these two were able to look at the laws and the various items that are there and put this plan together. And I'm so thrilled to share it with you because we've even had a special education law attorney look at this. And she's one of our national presenters that we listen to at the national level. And it was really nice to have her go through this and share with us that she thinks it's good to go as a national presenter. And so her name is Julie Weatherly, and she was so kind. She didn't even charge us. She was so excited to see that we had actually done this. Now, I suspect that there are many districts and even in the state of Utah that haven't gotten to this point now. And I think they're going to be eager to see where this goes. And the state level as well, I think they're anxious to see where we can make this happen and so forth. So I present it with pride that these two have spent so much time and effort and sweat trying to make sure that we're following state and federal laws, statutes. And if you go through it and look at it, I think it's been so nicely defined, so well explained. I'm not sure, though, at this point, if you have questions, because we do want a policy. We want something that, and I've talked to Kurt McCrae about this, and he understands it as well, that we really need to have board policy on this and your consent to make this happen. And so, again, I ask you if you've got questions or concerns at this point that you'd like to address. I've got two experts with me right now. So.
Any questions?
I have them. So as I read this, does this apply just to special ed classrooms or all classrooms in every school?
So I'll speak to that. So federal law came out in 2015 that we needed a policy around emergency safety interventions for all children, general ed or special ed.
Okay. Came from this.
Yeah, partially that and some other stuff, yeah. But federal law came out and said that because sometimes kids that are in general ed will have behaviors and there's legally, ways that we're allowed to handle that. So this applies to everybody.
Okay. That's what I assumed as I read it. It appeared that that was the case, but I wasn't sure. So thanks for clarifying that.
Oh, that's a good question. Thank you.
And another, to dovetail onto your comment, Terry, this came out a few years ago, and we thought it was a special ed manual, but it's really designed for general ed. It's a general ed manual. Special ed is a small portion of it, but it's really for the general ed principals and schools. Principals have them, and I know Terry reads hers often, so.
Good for you, Terry.
The other question I had was, it seems that there are some statements in here that require principals to do some things. Are those things they're already doing, or things that will be required of them in addition to what they're currently doing?
That's a really good question. They're currently doing them, or we're working with them to do them.
Okay.
Does that make sense? A lot of it falls under the multiple tiered systems of support model,
Okay.
where they're working with each level of intervention. And so they're already doing that or trying to do that in schools already. So we try to write it in a way where they are already trying to do that, and we're just going to help support them more to do that in the future.
That's great. I just didn't want another.
To add more, yeah.
To add more to the principals. Thanks.
Okay,
Oh, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Oh, no, you go first.
You go first.
No, first of all, I just want to commend you for doing this. This is really well written. I mean, it's very concise. It's really well supported from outside sources. I really appreciate the work you've put into this, and the fact that you've taken the time to have this examined by a recognized attorney is really crucial. I guess I'm a little bit puzzled, though, because these guidelines, you say a law was passed in 2015, a federal law, and especially given the attention that's been paid the last couple of years to, incidents with people who have suffered from mental illness, who have, died in positions where they were being physically restrained, even somewhat recently. I guess I'm curious, why isn't the state ahead of this? And is this work that you've done, do you feel like it's going to be adopted more widely, I guess, to preempt those kinds of problems in our state?
I guess I can speak to that. So the federal law came out in 2015, and they also said that state boards needed to kind of have like a template of what to put out. And that's you. Anyway, our state doesn't currently have a template anyway, and they're not very clear on it, and that's kind of where the federal and state aren't quite matching up. So we went with the federal guidelines, and that's why we had an attorney look at it, because we need it in place. So I hope I answered that
Yeah.
in a way that made sense.
Thanks for your investment in this.
And the state, I think the state is trying, but
Yeah.
they're not sure in a lot of cases either. And when we asked for their opinion, they were able to give us opinion, but nothing factual or concrete enough to make it a policy. And they would give us suggestions and ideas of things we might do, but nothing in a policy format.
And just to add to that, when we spoke with the state representatives, a lot of it was, their guideline was that districts should have a policy in place. Because truly, when you're going into litigation or have parent concerns in these type of situations, then your policy is what's going to hold up there. And so they're really trying to push more policy district-wide and not so much as a statewide, because it's going to be different depending on the population in the different districts. So we have one now.
Okay, I would just also like to say thank you for putting this together. It is well written. I'm kind of the format police here on the board, and we have been trying to get all of the policies formatted exactly the same, and your format is just a little bit different than what we adopted, and I don't think it's a big deal. Agenda, is it a? Okay, yeah, it's not a big deal, but I just wanted to mention that, so we stay.
I the same, so that's
Okay.
totally fine.
All right. Okay, thank you. Any other questions or?
Yeah, once again, nice job. This was very well done. Your definitions are well cited with the references. One question I had on the administrative regulation section, it reads well. I'm just wondering, is there a precedent that you look to for this, or I just want to know the background behind it a little bit, how you established that section?
This whole section, no, just one or the whole section?
Just the section. I mean, it reads really well, it looks good. I'm just trying to see if there's a precedent or someone's already adopted this and they're using it, or?
So we actually use what's called Totem PD in part of their training. They have an Aspen training. It's a lot like MANT or Safety Care, if you guys have heard of those, and it's the one that we use in our district. And the person that's over that had this model that they use in their district and is what they gave us as an example. So we kind of just used that model, and we looked at Granite School District, and we just looked at other districts that currently had policies in place, and that's kind of how we tried to mesh it as best as we could. And then that's why we also had the lawyer look it over to make sure we were using correct, wording and all of that. So that's kind of where that came from.
Okay, thank you.
And I just wanted to add to that too, that what we've seen in the past when we're working with students with behavior needs that need to be supported, is it's been more of a reactive approach. And so as we're working with our policy and moving forward and training teams and teachers, we want to make sure that we're using a proactive approach and that we still have policies in place for emergency situations. But first and foremost, we want to start with a positive outcome.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you. Good job. Okay, the next one is the mental health policy. Kurt.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Welcome back. What's the educator meme that says the month of August is one long Sunday night? Right?
Oh, so true.
True. So we're here to present the mental health policy to, this would replace board policy 3000, the suicide prevention policy adopted in 1990, as well as the wellness student health policy that was adopted back in 2010. So,
all right, any questions?
So does that mean that those two old policies will be removed from the
Yes.
policy book and replaced with this one?
That's right.
Awesome.
Yes.
So I did notice you reformatted yours.
Yes.
Thank you.
That was my biggest worry, honestly.
So thanks for doing that. It's great policy. It's written really well. I would suggest you get an editor just to go through. There's a few little things on it to finish it up, but you've gone to a lot of work putting this together, and it's great to have that policy in place, I think.
Great.
Any questions or concerns?
Needed.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Especially then.
All right, student fees and fee waivers policy update.
I'm going to be doing this through Board Docs.
Oh, in front of us? Oh, yeah.
Mine's still kind of.
They're kind of, they're stretched out.
Not yet. So they're still not there?
Just needs to be moved to the right a little.
Is it the same thing that we have as an attachment?
No.
It's different, okay.
No, this is in,
Well, if we take a current policy that's in board docs, and then I start to edit it, it immediately puts it in a draft form in board docs, and that's where you would go pull it up in board docs, is under draft. And then it saves us from uploading, reloading the whole document again if we just alter the current approved document. And the reason why I need to do this with the board tonight is the state school board met last week, and they've made several changes again to the school fees policy. And I'm just a little leery that if we don't keep up with it, and they're so tight about what they're trying to do with school fees right now, I just don't want Cache District to be found not in compliance with the policy or other directions that they're trying to go. So I'd want to share with you tonight some changes that the board approved last week, so you're aware of it on the current policy. And I'll answer any questions that you might have as we go through it. And I'll go through this just as quickly as I possibly can. One thing that the state board did say is they're putting together 5 video presentations talking about school fees, and one of those videos that they're making will be addressed strictly to board members to help you better understand what's going on with school fees and your responsibilities as a board member. That's not out yet, but they say that'll be coming within the next 4 to 6 weeks, that video for board members. So if you're okay, I'm going to start just running down the policy, and like I say, I'm going to do it very quickly unless you tell me, hey, slow down, I've got a question here. And so my changes are going to be in red, like right there. And I had to add the word fundraisers because the House Bill, R277407 does mention fundraiser in it. So I'm adding a statement here, but I'm going to show you how I'm going to work with it farther into the policy. So that's why I added that. They took out the word mutual right here. Why? I can't tell you why. They just took it out. So maybe it was too wordy of a sentence for them when they did it. Down here, this part, it says, talking about textbooks does not include instructional equipment or instructional supplies. They added that, which is a good add to go in there. The next part here in section 4, 6th grade students may be charged a school fee if the 6th grade is included in any of the grades 7 through 12. I didn't have that in the policy before. I already knew that, but I figured I better put it in the policy.
If they're included in the same grade or same school?
Right, like in the middle school. If the 6th grade is with 7th grade, now they can be charged a fee. But if they're not, you cannot have a fee with them. I asked Gary this C right here, if approved by the school board, you can charge a fee for what's called the supplemental kindergarten program. Gary says, yes, we do that, but we do not charge a fee, and at this time he does not want to charge a fee. But it is in the policy. E right here was in the policy before, the maximum amount and total aggregate, but what's new, it starts right here. The district may establish a reasonable number of activities, courses, or programs that will be covered by this annual maximum fee. So it isn't just wide open anymore. They did put some restraints on that because there's a lot of districts that complain. How are we supposed to set a maximum aggregate for a student when students, it could be endless, and vary so much with students on the number of activities and different things. So that's something that I need to talk with principals about to maybe come back with a recommendation for the board. Down here on I, this one here, they took out the words free to all students and said included in the course fee. Didn't make any real changes there because usually the projects that we did, the fee included the materials for that. So that didn't make much change for us on that one. Now I'm going down to section 7. I lined G out because it's repeated in another part of the policy. It'll come back in. So that's why it's lined out here. Section 8 talks about donations. They lined out the one that was currently there. Now it says the district can. It says if the district accepts a donation, the district shall prevent potential inequities in schools. Okay? Where before they didn't really want you to accept it, but now it says if the district accepts. Section 9, it talks about fee waivers. This is probably where a lot of the changes are starting to come in. And D is a new line. All fee waiver applications will receive a fee waiver decision and appeal form. That's this form that I just had passed around. So the requirement for all of our administrators is anyone who turns in an application will receive this form back, which either says you approved or denied. Okay? So we're going to be standard in our district using this form. And then number 2 down through 7 talks about the process. The principal has so many days to review it or to respond back. And if an applicant wants to appeal, no, I don't agree with you, principal, says here in this policy now in red that I've made the changes. The bottom half of this is the actual appeal form that the patron or whoever will fill out. That's what they send back to the principal, was that bottom part. And then as you follow the policy there through 7, it actually gets to a point where if nobody responds to them, they can appeal all themselves all the way back to the school board. But we'll make sure if it gets to the superintendent's office, because there's been no appeal, no comment or response back from the school, we'll make sure it gets handled at the district level before it gets to the board level. That's what that's saying in this new section right in here. And part of the law is, in our policy, we have to mention this appealing process right here, fee waiver appeal process, and that's this 1 through 7 right there. That's our policy. Okay. I just moved these lines down from farther up in the policy. J is a new one. The school principal shall submit the web-based certificate of compliance form, and the law states by October 31st. We're going to cover this in Monday's training with all of our administrators. This is a new form put out by the state office. It's all done electronically, where the principal has to sign off. I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. I know this, and they have to sign their name, verifying that they've done it. Section 10, they just took all the word community out. They just said to perform service, not community service. It can be all kinds of different services. So they took it totally out. C in this section 10, before it said the school could not suggest to a parent an installment plan. The new changes is a principal may suggest an installment plan. They can now suggest it as an option, which I think is a good change, because why wouldn't you let a principal make that suggestion? Here on the fundraiser, this is why I included that in the header of the new policy. There are these very specific 4 statements right here that are in this new 277-407. So I want to keep them here, but we actually have a very detailed policy right now, right there. So I'm referring them for the detailed policy to go to section 4000, and you can see our current fundraising policy. And that's where the details will be of the fundraising. The law stated that the board has to have in place a fundraising approval process. And when I talked to the different districts and even to the state, they said our intent is not for the school board to approve that. If you already have something in place, which we do in our current fundraising policy, We already have it in place, how principals approve fundraisers and everything. So I'm suggesting we don't change any of that. We just keep operating the way we have with fundraisers unless the board wants to change that approval process. But that current process is right there in that policy. And it really lays at the foot of the building principal for the fundraiser approval policy right now. Number section 12, eligibility. This is a big change right here. There's two of them. Right now, the state superintendent shall annually establish income levels for fee waiver eligibility and publish that on the state website. State superintendent has to do that. Why? Because they took out number 2 down here. We have always used, if you qualify for school lunch, free or reduced, you're now qualified for a fee waiver. That's gone. That's now out of the law. And I asked the state when I had them on the phone the other day, why did you do that? Why did you make that change? They said because we have many schools in the state, they could be 60, 70, 80% free and reduced lunch. And you can't say that they're 70, 80%, automatic fee waiver. They can't operate. So that's why you go back up. The state superintendent is now going to set this income level. That's what's going to change in what we're going to see happening in the state. So that's why that change was made. Textbook fees, we've already done this, but it's really not effective until 22-23, but we've in essence implemented it already in our district on textbook fees. Budgeting and spending revenue, section 14 here, starting in the 2021 school year. I was talking with Dale about this earlier. We have to have in place what's called a spending plan, where every fee is going to be accounted for, and Dale's going to have to wrestle with that, how we're going to account for that in every category. I don't even have a beginning answer on that one yet. But that's a year away. And then the very last section, section 15, I took all of that out because what the state now published was this school fees compliance form. It's due by October 31st, and all the instructions are in that form. So all the rest I took out because we don't have to say all that. So that's the update for the school board on where we're at on school fees. Do you have any questions you'd like to ask me at the next board meeting? Then I'd ask the board for approval of the changes made here, and we can go in and clean up the edits in here. Because right now, if you looked at our district webpage, you wouldn't see an active policy on fees because it's in draft form right now.
So is it their responsibility to go to the principal to get an application for fee waiver? This
No.
is the one for appeal, but what about application?
All schools were required this summer in their summer meeting to send out the email, the letter from the state that talks about how they apply for a fee waiver. And all those instructions were in that letter.
Okay.
So that's how they go through that process to do it.
I have a couple of questions, but it's not really on the policy. I'm fine with the policy, but as I was reading the one that was in our board docs, I was just getting more worried about high school budgets as I read through those. Are we nervous about that in our district?
Well, all we can do right now is run a year the way we are. The principals, when we met and set the maximum fees and those types of things, they felt okay about the way we're setting those fees. I don't think we're going to have a huge run on more kids applying for fee waivers, but just so that the board knows, our high schools right now are anywhere $20,000 to $30,000 in fee waivers a year. Okay.
The other question I wondered about is, would you want to have donors who would contribute to this?
The
For
way
the fee
this-
waivers?
The way this reads in here, it says the school's foundation could, like our Cash Education Foundation, if we asked them and they took that on, people could donate to the foundation could help offset those costs at schools.
So
But
we're
the
okay with that?
law recommends you go through your foundation to do
Okay.
that. Now the donor can get a tax credit for that or whatever, and it just is a cleaner way for the
So if they
donation to
do
come.
that, is it equally distributed
It would
to
have to
all of
be.
the schools?
Based upon fee waivers.
Probably mostly the high schools and junior.
Yeah,
or-
based upon the level of fee waivers. One high school may have a lot more fee waivers than another. You kind of have to hit that equity. The one who gets hit the hardest would get the most,
Okay.
okay?
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Mike, have you seen any evidence that in spite of the fee waiver policy, that students who come from families who have lower means tend to participate less?
No, I have not, because our principals have always been very mindful of if you don't qualify for a fee waiver, you have some financial issues, struggles right now, our principals have always been willing to work with the family, to work with voluntarily reduced fees. Sometimes they'll eliminate some of the fees so they can participate in certain things. Our principals have been very good about that.
I
Just
guess
doing
what
that
I'm
on their
asking
own.
is, I know the principals are very good at addressing those issues when students or families bring those issues to the school.
Yeah.
But is there any evidence that you know, the fee waiver process, for example, I mean, I put myself in a kid's place and bringing this form in to make this request to a school to begin with could be, you know, I guess, hurt your pride a little bit, your dignity. And I'm wondering if families who come from backgrounds with lower means tend to just avoid this process altogether.
Well, and maybe
Terry
why,
might be the
maybe
one.
why Terry's here, she can answer it, but there has to be a lot of discretion. When these fee waivers come in, our principal in this policy, our principal is the one who's assigned to approve or disapprove, nobody else. And it needs to be kept confidential. But Terry, if you want to address how you deal with, if you feel like, you know, the minorities, are they staying silent and not participating, or are they coming forward and doing it?
I can tell you, when I was at Willow Valley, we had a grant opportunity that was based on the number of free and reduced, or students on the free and reduced lunch, okay? And oftentimes they'll bring in both forms filled out, but our percentage was at, I don't know, something like 23, and we knew the catchment area, and we kind of went out to the public and said, you know, please come and apply. You don't have to use it if you qualify, but it would really help us with this grant that's going to provide opportunities to kids if you'll come in and apply. And we went up to 43%. They didn't use it. They didn't use it. So I give you that example, but I would also tell you that my feeling is, my experience lately in the last few months has been that attitudes are changing, and I'm starting to see some attitudes of, it's my right. And I'm going to take advantage of the fee waiver. And am I making sense on that? I had a conversation the other day, and this was the exact conversation. And I think, like Mike said, we're going to have to see where this direction from the state goes. But I literally had a conversation that sounded like this. We've never done fee waiver, but now with the changes in the state, people around us are telling us, yep, get that fee waiver in and get every activity paid for. So I think you've got some of that. Now, to what extent, I don't know, you know. As far as the confidentiality goes, I hope, and I believe this to be so, you have administrators and paraprofessionals and support staff in your schools that I think try to be very confidential with the information that's given to them. And in fact, I think we are trained and reminded constantly, which we should be, that confidentiality matters, and that we need to be professional and we need to do that. And also, I think, you know, just that I'm thinking of all my colleagues. I think we're all pretty empathetic, and I hope that our patrons feel like we have open doors and they can come in and they can talk to us, and if there's a situation, you know, come in and let us help you. That's what we're there for. That we don't want kids in positions where they can't participate if they have a desire to do so. That we want all of the kids to reach their full potential. And I think we all understand that the more they are involved in school and have the ability to develop talents or improve their talents, that they're going to do better academically. I think we all know that. Does that make sense? Thank you.
I guess the reason I'm asking, I mean, there's no reason to prolong this a long time, but there's strong, really strong correlation between the amount of engagement that a student has in extracurricular activities and their academic success. And to the extent, you know, that we have any process that makes students reluctant to access, you know, this kind of help, you know, that barrier could actually lead to disparities in student outcomes, and that's a huge issue. And I don't have any question that the principals in this district are outstanding, and so I know that they are discreet and, you know, they respect, you know, the privacy of families. But if students self-select themselves out of activities, that's a different issue completely. And I actually kind of think it's a significant one. You know, there's a lot of anecdotal evidence I picked up in my own area that there are two big barriers to students participating in activities. One is costs, you know, and if students are reluctant to seek this kind of waiver, then that creates a barrier. The second is, especially for sports, the added cost of, you know, of participating in sports year-round, you know, beyond school. And so there's kind of a double barrier to students who are disadvantaged socioeconomically, and, you know, that has an impact, you know, on their academic outcomes as well. So I don't know if this is something that we might want to, I'd be interested in seeing whether there are actual data, you know, that tell us what these barriers actually, how big of an impact they actually have. I don't know if those data would be accessible, or if it would even be possible to study that, but, you know, I think like you just said at the end, it's a big issue, because with that strong correlation, you know, any barrier, you know, whether it's a part of this fee process or otherwise, any barrier that's placed in front of students is going to impact outcomes.
I think the data would be interesting to look at. I will tell you, we have a grant. How long's the Gear Up grant been in place, Kurt?
This will be the full second year.
So the Gear Up grant, there's an application process, and we can't, so to get into Gear Up, you have to qualify financially, right? But we can't send letters out based on who's on free and reduced lunch or, because we don't have that information. That's confidential, right? So.
And it's seen as targeting a group.
Right. So what we've done in the schools, and you can add to this if I'm wrong, at least where we're at, we come across kids that we deal with and we're like, man, let's see if the parent would be interested in Gear Up and applying. And I would tell you what we found. The kids that we felt like needed that help didn't qualify for the help. It was mind-boggling that they didn't qualify for the help because they had to be at a certain income level. So, I think that the data would be interesting because we have all kinds of discrepancies, I guess, and if we could, I would be interested in what can we do, finding an answer to this question, a question to the parents, what can we do to make you feel okay about coming in, or to increase your confidence that it's confidential, that you can come in and you can ask for help. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think the only I don't think we have any data that you're referring to, because I've never seen a survey with a question like, do you ever not participate in an activity because of cost or because you would have to ask for a fee waiver? I've never seen a survey with a question like that or anything related to it. And that's the kind of information that we would need, right? Because I personally know several families who just look at the fee schedule and self-select themselves out of activities because they look at those astronomical costs and say, guess I won't be doing that.
I think that's a correct assessment. I've never seen anything either.
Yeah.
We don't have any data.
It'll be another point that principals will have to be facing this year is we've been pretty liberal in groups traveling and doing different things, opportunities. But this is going to present a real challenge to schools if they're going to be able to continue to do that, because if a student's on a fee waiver, that's all covered, that's all paid for, and schools just cannot bear that kind of cost. They can't. And so I think you're going to see some things come back in closer, and activities are going to stay closer. Still participate, but it's not going to be the opportunities that kids have had in the past because of that.
Any other questions?
How will you deal with as things come in closer with activities, how will you deal with repercussions, complaints, whatever you want to call them, from the top 1% of parents?
Yeah. The superintendent's had some discussions with other soups on that, and I don't know, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but some of this upper group is saying, yes, we will do it, and we'll come up with the money so that everybody will be covered. Great. Great.
That issue is out there, and we realize
I know it is.
we're going to face it.
I know
Yeah.
it is, because the
And,
principals face it, right? Terry?
We are
Yeah, the principals face it.
desperately trying to figure out, what's the line that promises equality but also allows for excellence, and it's a difficult situation. We'll face it as we come to it.
Yeah. just an example through the foundation, some big donors, you know, if a kid's in debate and things like that, don't have to worry about that. That money's provided and they're going to go because donors have made that money available, and there's no question about fees or costs on that. They're just going to go.
Does our district in the foundation have endowments?
Yeah, they have some.
They do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Dale, do you want to hit the light? You done?
Okay,
I'm done.
are we, everybody through discussing? Thank you very much, Mike, for following up and keeping us ahead of the game on this. Appreciate that very much. I didn't have anybody who said they needed to report on a committee. Is that true? Okay. Then, as far as the board president report, I just want to present this idea and see what you think about it. When we have our legislators visit and luncheon, which will be here this year, and we're in charge of it. Last time, Carolyn made these little nameplates with "Thank you for what you do." I think she just did it for the legislators. I can't remember. But I was wondering, would we at all be interested in doing something either really fun or something a little bit more, just to say thanks to our legislators at that meeting? Am I too middle schoolish here, or what do you think about the idea?
I think it's a great idea, but we'd have to find out what the current dollar limit is for gifts to elected officials.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know?
I don't.
What do you think about this, Steve? Do you think this is
Oh,
corny or okay?
All I know is it's a year when this meeting is going to be really, really important, that we be able to have a good dialogue with them and that they understand where our concerns are. And I think anything we can do to get them in a mood that they'll accept our concerns would be greatly appreciated, and anything we can do. But Dale, do you know what the guidelines are now?
50?
I think that's what I remember.
That sounds like a lot, doesn't it? I was thinking like candy bars.
Well, we can do candy bars.
Okay, so.
The letter of the law, a pencil probably violates the law. Give to somebody. I remember some of the presentations that the state was giving us. They said if you really go to the letter of the law, there's basically nothing you can accept legally. But only until the Chromebooks back.
They're just on loan.
Okay, so one other thing that I thought about was just a water bottle, a metal water bottle that they could take to the legislature with, I don't know, it's probably too much to have something printed on them. But if we like the idea, will you put your thoughts to work and see if you can come up with something that might be kind of fun, but let them know we really do have good legislators here, and they do listen and help us out whenever they can. And I just feel like we should say thanks instead of always dumping on them everything we want from them, although that's going to have to happen too. But, okay. All right, Superintendent.
We got 15 minutes left in us?
Yeah.
Okay. Been promising you some notes on tax reform. I don't want to just hand them out though and just have you take them home. I think we need to have a discussion, so I'd like to do that if we could. You three down there, you might as well have a copy. And give me one more. There you go. Yeah. So I took the opportunity of going down to the last meeting of the tax committee, reform committee, and I didn't get to the Box Elder one. So some of you who went there, I can tell you that I didn't get the change of venue notice, so I was in Lehigh wandering around looking for the Silicon Slopes building, and fortunately I found a policeman, and he pulled in and parked, and I pulled in right next to him and showed him the address, and he said, well, I'm the policeman here to enforce this meeting, and you found the right place. And we walked in, and I realized it was a building about half this size, and there was nobody there. And I said, well, you might be here to provide police protection, but there's not gonna be a meeting here. So I called Lyle, and he said, oh, it's been moved to Utah Valley, so I scurried on down to Utah Valley. A minute and a half is not much time, but I can tell you at this particular meeting, about 200 people, and there were about 12 lawyers and about 12 plastic surgeons, and they took up most of the time. And neither one of those groups want a tax on their services, I can tell you that. So other than that, there were about 5 educators, Rob Smith from Alpine and one of his board members and a couple of his teachers. Nothing out of the ordinary except when they talked at the end what they had learned over the course of the summer. It was kind of revealing, and I would suggest that maybe you just go on the website and just go to the very end of that meeting and listen to what they had to say, because it's quite compelling. So anyway, you've been asking for things, and I had the minute and a half, and I was going to try and go through something like this. And when I sat down that day, I realized that I had to really whittle it down. And so if you want to hear what I had to say, I'm about the 8th person to talk that night, and Rob Smith was about the 5th person. And Rob Smith said some pretty important things, I thought. And one of them was that we have no qualms with sharing the funds and the income tax with our colleagues in higher ed. He said we ought to just declare that battle over and recognize that even the intent of the 1930 people who, in the midst of economic depression, decided we needed to support K-12 education, that they probably would agree that K-16 education is about the same place now as a K-12 education would have been in 1930. So that issue is dead. Rob also threw out that maybe we could take the money that comes from liquor tax, instead of giving it to the school lunch program, just put it in the general fund and let them use it however they want. But if I have a chance, and I think when we bring our legislators in, and any other chance that I get, this was kind of what I would like to just go over. And I think if I go over it with you, you might have a better idea of how to talk to your people who talk to you. So income tax was instituted in 1930-31. At that time, it was kind of, and Lyle Hilliard goes back to this all the time. He said it used to be that districts had to put 25% of the money up, and the state would contribute to the 75%. We're not there. We get far more than that of our share of funding from the state. And so that's how it started anyway. In 1948, there was amended the Constitution so that all income tax went to K-12. So it was plain and simple. No matter how much was raised, it all went to public ed. 1996, the Constitution again was amended to allow income tax to support higher ed. Okay, that's a monumental shift, and you'll see how it affected us. Since 1996, $7.8 billion of income tax, an average of $314 million per year, has gone to support higher ed. And I'm telling you where I got this information, and you can find it if you want to search. It's all in that little packet I gave you. Okay. Funding effort. There was a time when I could go all over this country and I could face any superintendent, any board member, and they'd say, "Oh, you poor thing, you come from Utah. They don't believe in supporting education." And I'd just say, "You know what? We don't have a lot of money behind each child because we have a lot of children. But I'm telling you, the people there really do care about education because their support based on the amount of money backing up education per $1,000 of income is really high. And it got to the point where we were the 7th highest state in the country at one time in the amount of money that we had available. And that has since deteriorated to a record low. We're now at 37th or lower. And so you can't even beat that drum. And there's a report in the Utah Foundation that'll tell you that. But somehow, in 1996, I was going to put a bullet in here that nowhere was there a report in this state that said that funding for education was adequate. But in that 1996, or in the report called Getting By with Less, in 1996, the Utah Foundation actually did tell the legislature that they thought that there was more than sufficient money in the education fund, that income tax was providing too much money. So in order to make that calculation, you have to say to yourselves, since 85% of our money is spent on salaries, you had to make the connection that they thought we were paying teachers what they deserved and should get. It's the only way you could make that correlation. So had we received our share of that money over the last years, I had Dale go to work and put together a salary schedule. And I can vouch for the 24 years that I've been here. We have tried as board members and as district people, we have tried to put as much money as we could into salaries. So I'm a person that's been here during the whole time. And I could tell them, looking straight in the eye, had you given me more money, I would have put it on the salary schedule. And so Dale has done that for us, and I'm going to give you a copy now of the salary schedule, what it would have been had we received that money, and we put the same amount we got the same share from the state that we normally get, and we put the same share of that into teacher salaries. And there's probably enough to get a couple of copies down that way. But you'll see, we right now would have almost a $48,000 beginning salary. Okay, if you recognize what's going on in the state right now, there are districts out there who have gone to the public and said, we are going to raise teacher salaries and we're going to raise them significantly. And I've given you a copy at your desk of the 3 districts that have gone through, essentially raised their salaries to $50,000. I just saw a report today that indicated that Canyon School District, for the first time in years, is starting with a teacher in every classroom. And they attribute that to the fact that they raised their salary schedule. So people are coming there. So if we put 85% of our money into salaries, it's only, the only conclusion you can draw is money that could have gone to teacher salaries has been, for the last 24 years, gone into the general fund, and in theory has been used to support higher ed, which allowed the state to take money that used to go to higher ed from sales tax and move it over to transportation. So you've just had one big shell game. And essentially, the public ed people of the state and the children of the state for the last 24 years have solved the structural imbalance problem that the state had. And they did it for 24 years. And then it got to the point where the whole cost of higher ed started to come out of the income tax fund. And then you had no more flexibility. And that's where the problem is. So we could continue to go down here. Utah average teacher salary is 47, national is 60. That's found in the Apples to Apples report, which just came out in April 2019. Another report from Utah Foundation, Utah's total tax burden is lower than it's been in decades. That's looking at property tax, sales tax, gas tax, individual tax from cities, all taxes. We're at a tax burden that's been lower than it has been for decades. Utah's the only state in the nation that uses general fund revenue to pay for transportation improvement. That's from the Utah taxpayer, August 2019. If you go to that little paragraph, it'll tell you that they believe the state should quit doing that. And that would free up $800 million that's going over to pave roads. That's more than enough to offset the structural imbalance. They've either got to start paying for it by having higher gas tax, or we've got to have higher registration fees, but we've got to have, according to the Utah taxpayers, the people who benefit start paying for the roads.
Yeah, user's tax.
Yeah. So we go on down, and so Utah's the only state that uses general funds. Then the education fund revenues have acted as a pass-through amounts that have allowed general fund revenues from the state sales tax to be used for other governmental services. So everything I've told you up to this point is not my opinion. It's just facts. And it's facts from their essentially research foundation and their taxpayers association, which they pay close attention to, okay? So for over 24 years, income tax money that was one time dedicated solely to K-12 education has been used to cover expenses that should be covered by sales tax and gasoline tax. That's purely my opinion, okay? You can buy into that opinion or you can not. And then I think the whole crux of this is, let's have all taxpayers, not just public school employees, whose money that would have been salary for them over the last 24 years has gone over to pay for services that the rest of the state hasn't had to pay for in the sales tax increase. So I think we ought to have all people participate in that, and that the education fund ought to stay for the students in Utah public schools and universities. Then I just threw in one little quote at the end. If this guy's still alive today, he probably reads this quote and weeps every night. If he's dead, he's rolling over in his grave, because he was the Utah Education Association Director of Advocacy Programs and Political Action. He said this in 1996. The bottom line is, we don't think it will result in less funding for public schools. We can change it and include higher ed and still do as well for public schools. Well, there's people saying that again, and I heard it down there at Utah Valley University by some of the people who are sitting on this committee. We can go into the income tax fund, and we can take additional resources out of that silo, and everything will be okay. And I'm telling you, I won't be around 24 years, but I don't want to be the superintendent, and I don't know who he's going to be, that has to come before some committee 24 years down the road and say, boy, we made another blunder in 2019 by allowing dedicated funds to be used for, I don't care if it's the most pressing and holy need on earth, taking care of people who don't have health insurance. We can do it as a state in a different way and not take money away from the public ed funds of the state. And so I'm going to present the same data to Lyle and to anybody who will listen, and I'm going to be at every committee meeting that I can, and I'm going to just do everything possible. I would like to sit down. I think we as an education community would like to sit down and let's work out something that enhances, if we need to, the sales tax and the gas tax portion of our state revenue. But let's don't go back to the well and take more out of the education fund. Because in essence, you're just telling teachers they're not worth it. And you can't sit here as a board in one of the lowest assessed market value districts in the state and say that we can do it on our own, because we can't. The difference between even Jordan and Murray, but especially for the canyons of the world and the park cities, is we're asking our people, it's $760 on the average home for us to raise our teacher salary to 50. It's 144 in canyons. We can't do it on our own. So this is our source of funding. This is the only way you get equity in the state. If we break down to it's every district on its own to see how high you can get salaries, we're gonna lose that race. And if we lose that race, our kids are gonna be hurting for years. So I just ask you to read all the material I gave you. I'd ask you to pick up this book. I gave you 2 books tonight, but this is the book I'd like you to read first. I don't know how many of you have heard Jamie Vollmer talk before. He's the one that tells the blueberry ice cream story. How many of you heard that before? Read it, because this is the reason people don't understand the difference between a public entity, school, and what most people think are the business answers to education. This guy gets it, and I hope that you would read it. It says, building public support for American public schools. I think that's one of your goals, is to try and have a better relationship with your public. They need to understand, why is it that we don't want education, income tax money going anywhere else? Well, it's because basically we would like to provide the kind of education that we know we can if we're able to get the right people in the classroom. And this book just is a great book so that you can talk to your people you live among. One of my biggest failings in life is I think everybody knows what I know, and they don't. They haven't spent 45 years of their life trying to run systems in states that don't put very much money into systems. The whole reason we're having this discussion tonight about fees is because we don't fund appropriately. People who come here from other states, they've never seen a fee schedule. They wonder why we have it. Well, we have it because we don't get enough money to even pay teachers decent, let alone provide all these things for kids to have all these experiences. So yeah, I'm going down firing my musket. I'm not going to have somebody put their arm around me and say it's going to be all right. It's not going to be all right. It's not going to be all right, folks, if we have to take income tax money and start paving roads with it. We've already done that for 24 years. They just did it under disguise. And so I'm hoping that we can have a discussion with our own legislators, and I'm hoping I can get my fellow superintendents to understand, because none of them have been around for 24 years. They haven't. There's not very many board members who've been around for 24 years. So they don't even know this whole history. They don't know that they took Social Security and retirement away from us years ago when things got bad, and that you took away 8 professional development days, and they've never given that money back to us. They took away depreciation of buses. We don't get any depreciation on our buses anymore. So we're picking up all those costs, and then our teachers are just not paid what they should be paid. And I'm not asking a national salary for teacher. I'm just asking, let's find out what the average person in Utah gets paid to be a doctor or a dentist or a lawyer or a businessman. In Idaho, it's about 85%. If you were a doctor in Idaho, you earned about 85% of what the average doctor across the United States. And so we quit shooting for the national average in Idaho. We said, let's just pay our teachers at the 85th percentile. Let's just do that and show them that we care. I'm telling you, those teachers in those 3 districts are really appreciative of what their board has done. But boy, for our board to have to do that, our people would really have to bite a hard bullet. And I don't know if we could get it done. So we've got to have this kind of support from the state. And so I'm hoping that This will give you some information that you can use as you talk to your fellow people. I don't think people have any idea that $7.8 billion could have gone into the public schools, but it went somewhere else. I don't think they have any idea that that's what they did in 1996. So, could somebody put together one that would negate everything I've said here? I don't think so, because I've taken it right out of the reports that they've had done for their information. So anyway, that's kind of where we're at, and I went 20 minutes. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Steve. I really appreciate you putting this together because we needed to be educated on this.
And that's what I realized, we're in the education business, and sometimes we don't even educate our own people. So the principals are going to get this same message too.
Good.
And teachers are going to get this same message, because they need, a teacher coming into our system who's been here for even 5 years, they have no idea what happened in '96.
Yeah.
All they know is they're not getting paid what they could get paid in 70% of places that look just like us anywhere in the United States. They'd get more money to be a teacher. I've done that survey 3 times in this district, and it's come back the same every time. We pay at the 30th percentile. We pay our custodians at the 30th percentile. We pay our teachers at the 30th. We pay our administrators at the 30th. When I came to this district, we paid the superintendent at the 5th percentile. I could have gone to 95 places in this country and been paid more that look just like this. I'm not talking about park cities. I'm talking about districts that look just like us. And that's what the cost of living in this beautiful valley is. But we need to recognize that we can do better. If our effort was still up there, I wouldn't even have handed this out. But when we're no longer even in the top 10 of effort, then we can do better. So that's the end.
Thank you. There is a lot of good information in the packet that Steve gave us, so if you have any time to read those articles, it does help to educate us, which we are, one of our jobs is to kind of be cheerleaders for the district and help the public
And you do a
understand.
nice job of it. There isn't a teacher, I think you could go out to our teachers and they would tell you that they appreciate our boards for the last 24 years. There's never been anything they've done that would indicate that they didn't care about teachers. It's just that it's really hard for us to do anything.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to have that equalized dollar from the state. And that's what the income tax fund has done. If we have to rely on just our own market value, we are going to fall woefully behind.
Good food for thought. Thank you. Thanks to our district people. Appreciate the help with our new, they're not Chromebooks. What are they called?
They're
Oh, they're Chromebooks? Oh, okay. Glad we have our new Chromebooks, and thanks for the help. And Mike, thanks for all the work you do to keep these different programs going. And Jenda, love the work that you do with the publicity. And thanks to the board for getting the TSA reports done. And Steve and Dale, thank you. We have a great district because we have great people working in it.
This is
Thank
your
you.
second book on your reading list. When you get done with that, tell me and I'll give you the second mountain book. Because it doesn't deal so much with education, it's just on becoming a better person.
All right. Anybody have anything else?
I have a question. I had a call yesterday from my neighbor who went to Canyon to register for kindergarten, and someone in the school office was saying Canyon is going to become a walking school, and she wants to know where those kids in Avon and Paradise are going to be bused to. I says they're not going to be bused anywhere but to Lewiston, jokingly, but someone, I don't know who in the office of Canyon is telling them that someday that's going to be a walking school, and Paradise and Avon, they don't want to be shipped too far away.
Bad information, right?
Well,
That's what I
yeah,
told
there's
them. I
been
says,
no talk, no
"That's what I
dialogue
told them,
whatsoever.
But it is being said.
But I think what they would be looking at is they've been looking out of those mountains and they're seeing all those homes going up,
I
and they're
know.
gonna say, it will fill up at some point, Yeah.
So I can tell them that nothing's been.
No dialogue whatsoever.
Okay.
No.
So just tell Canyon to cool it.
Yeah.
Do you know if Wayne knows that Airport Road is going to be closed?
Does he know
Uh-huh.
for the bike race?
No, for
For
road work,
construction.
road construction.
Oh, I don't know. I didn't know that.
And that is that's the standard bus route into Green Canyon.
So when's that happening?
Well, Mayor Kevin said that the that the Logan City person who called him about it, said it would be at the end of this month.
That's what they
Yeah.
said. Someone said that on the news or somewhere.
Yeah, it's really happening.
And for the whole total length, or,
No, for all the part that's in Logan City.
okay. Okay.
I don't know how they can do construction on any more roads. They don't have any more orange cones. They're all used.
Yeah.
Boy, I'm telling you, there's a lot of rocks laying around on roads.
All right, if there's nothing else, this meeting is adjourned.